Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chair Kinsler, for being with us today. I've been calling for this hearing since February 14th, when the committee held an oversight hearing on the FTX crypto crash. A lot has happened since your appearance last September. We experienced several bank failures, and in response, this committee called up the relevant financial institutions and regulators to hold them accountable for their actions. But when it comes to the SEC, we've had to wait a whole year to speak with you in person. Even when a company like FTX collapses, we still have to wait. Complete and timely attention to congressional inquiries is critical to ensuring independent agencies remain transparent and accountable to the American people. Yet sadly, your agency has fallen short on this obligation to be transparent and responsive to congressional oversight. I have serious concerns with the way you are leading the SEC. The U.S. economy, and more specifically, our capital market system, is the global gold standard and one of our country's greatest strategic and competitive advantages over our peers and our adversaries. However, the United States can only retain these benefits if our regulatory environment empowers budding entrepreneurs to innovate, launch, and grow new job-creating ventures. America's global competitive edge is innovation and the American spirit to create. As SEC Chair, your goal should be to fuel competition and innovation in the marketplace and expand the ability of Americans from all walks of life, whether that be a Boeing aircraft mechanic in North Charleston or a soybean farmer in Fort Dodge, Iowa, to access a wide spectrum of investment options for their hard-earned dollars. Without pro-growth regulations, we are limiting opportunities for our kids and our kids' kids from being able to take control of their own financial futures. That's why it's especially troubling that under your leadership, the SEC has failed to implement these types of pro-growth rules. Instead, your agency has churned out a seemingly endless assembly line of new and unneeded regulatory hurdles to capital formation and market access. Let me go through just some of those rules. First, the compliance burdens of your proposed climate disclosure rule are expected to quadruple the cost of being a public company. And that's just for one single rule. Your tax on private markets through the private funds rule will hurt small businesses and push small and diverse fund managers out of the market, ultimately limiting jobs and opportunity for many in the local economy. Meanwhile, your complex proposed overhaul of equity market operations will harm market access for retail investors and increase firms' cost of capital, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. You've issued several proposals aimed at reworking the regulatory regime for the open-end fund industry, including mutual funds used by millions of America's retirement savers, while providing tissue paper-thin rationale for why these reforms are needed. Despite it being labeled a rule on artificial intelligence, your power grab to regulate emerging and existing technologies, even Excel spreadsheets, is beyond the SEC's scope and will ultimately stifle innovation. Finally, and I certainly could go on with more, but your proposed revisions to the current rules for safeguarding customer assets are so overreaching, you've placed your fellow regulators at the CFTC, the Fed, and Treasury between a rock and a hard place. These proposals and rulemakings will have a tremendous effect on our capital market system. Yet under your leadership, the SEC has failed to conduct thorough cost-benefit analysis, much less look at the overall impacts of these proposals, and has limited the time the public can have the time to analyze and then comment on these rules and the proposals. This is kind of like using all your draft choices to pick a quarterback and forgetting about the offensive line. Rulemakings must be justified and supported by common sense economic analysis, which brings me full circle. Rulemakings must be done in a thorough, transparent manner, which includes responsiveness to congressional oversight, including from the minority members of this committee. The American people have a right to know what their government is doing, and your agency's blatant refusal to respond to our constitutionally mandated oversight represents a dereliction of your duties to the American people. A few final thoughts before I close. I think opportunity can exist for all investors, and it should. Throughout my time in Congress, I've prioritized enacting policies that open more doors to opportunity for future generations and give Americans in every corner of the United States the chance to better their economic standing and build generational wealth. It is clear under this administration and under your time as SEC chairman that regulation, not innovation, is the preferred medicine for every perceived policy injury. This should not be the case. I look forward to your testimony and then our discussion on these questions.